Welcome, everybody, to episode 3 of The Race to Revenue. I am joined today, very excited to be joined today by Kellie Capote, CCO at Gainsight. And we are talking about probably the most important topic that I think is on every single revenue leader's mind right now, which is how to protect your customer base. Important always, but especially important in an economic downturn. And who better to talk to us than the company that pioneered customer success and the person who leads that function at Gainsight. Welcome, Kellie. It's a pleasure for you to be here.
Absolutely. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Kyle. And could not be more excited about this topic. It's, as you can imagine, very, very top of mind for me, both with my organization and helping others in the space of customer success.
Wonderful, wonderful. So on that note, actually, I think most people are probably familiar with Gainsight, but give us the 30-second overview. What does Gainsight do? How would you explain it to somebody who's never heard about it?
Yeah, great question. So the oversimplified answer is Gainsight, our platform, helps our customers drive better outcomes for their customers. So it's a customer success management software that allows you to not only you have a single source of truth of your customer, drive workflow orchestration, integrated journeys, both human-led and digital-led, understand the usage and behavior. So that way you're constantly being proactive and as strategic as possible to drive outcomes for your customers, which obviously in turn should drive better growth for your organization.
Wonderful. Love that. And your role, Chief Customer Officer, you've been at Gainsight for close to 6 years now, I think.
Yeah,
is that right?
6 years. Spot on.
Okay, awesome. That's amazing. And prior to that, you've had all sorts of selling roles. You've had pre-sales roles, you've had post-sales roles, and now you find yourself as the Chief Customer Officer. What exactly does that mean? And how has your background through all these other revenue functions prepared you for this CCO role?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So I'll start with what does my role mean? And then I'll explain to you very briefly my journey and why I went in this direction. Because I think there is a lot of connective tissue across the various revenue functions within organizations. Chief Customer Officer, I hate using the term, quite frankly, pre-sales and post-sales, because I do think that in these days, we need to appreciate it as kind of one go-to-market engine. But functionally, sometimes it's the easiest way to distinguish between the different parts of the business. So my organization, I have 4 core pillars. I have our CSM organization. So those are your customer success managers who are there taking care of your customers, helping drive them to their desired business outcomes on a regular basis. I have our support organization, so managing tickets, making sure that we're kind of on top of any issues they might bump into. Our professional services organizations to onboard our customers and manage services to accelerate time to value and additional outcomes. And then I also have a centralized CS ops scale and experience org that does a bunch of different things. So pretty much anything after the point of sale, once they've signed the contract, gets shifted over to my organization for the longevity of their relationship with Gainsight.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, and then I guess going back to the second part of your question, you're absolutely right. My career was born more out of your traditional sales capacity. Mm-hmm. I was a sales girl, kind of through and through, early days in my career. I think what I personally learned over time. So I was more on the hunting side to begin with. Then I found myself evolving into more of account management, partner management. And then before I officially had a customer success title, quite frankly, I was doing a lot of the same things that we do in customer success today. We just weren't pointing that at the organizations I was at. But what I learned is I didn't enjoy the transactional side of selling that much. I enjoyed building and fostering those long-term relationships, understanding what their business goals were, and really kind of, rolling up my sleeves and helping them get there and then maturing, those goals over time. So I think my strengths combined with also just thinking about, business context and the way that we're evolving to recurring revenue models, this whole idea of customer success was super appealing to me. It made a lot of business sense. I saw the writing on the wall. So understanding my strengths and what energized me is how I landed at Gainsight. And it's been an awesome, 6-year journey. I've spent the entirety of my career in customer success at Gainsight, but kind of growing and scaling different teams and organizations, and going on near 2 years here soon in the CCO role.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's super interesting. And it's funny how that happens, Kellie, where you have this passion for customer education and customer enablement, and you want to align with their strategic initiatives. And that's just kind of the way you operate. And who would have thought it now becomes your career?
And it's funny too, though, because kind of going back to the revenue role piece, there's so much of what we do in customer success. I think the good news, customer success, broadly speaking, is now appreciated as like a growth engine for your business. It's not what people understood it to be 5 years ago as just this churn mitigation team, right? Firefighting, et cetera. Like, we understand if we take care of our customers, they're going to stay with us, they're going to grow with us, they're going to advocate for us. So a lot of the skill sets and the types of things that I learned in my sales days, right? Of, the challenger sale and value propositions and objective handling and negotiation, all these things, they play out really well in the customer success world. And quite frankly, we do a lot of the same training across success and sales for that reason. The initial sale is just the first sale. And now we need to understand and think about the customer journey as really a continuous extension of that sales cycle. I always say if customers aren't growing, they're likely on the path to churn. So getting organizations to embrace that mindset really helps you think about like how these teams should work together and just the direction we need to take them in.
If customers aren't growing, they're on the path to churn. That is a wonderful sentiment and a really good segue into the topic for today, that, the economic downturn. And you mentioned another thing here, Kellie, which is that your customer base, more and more companies, mostly, in large part because of Gainsight, are thinking about their customer base as the growth engine, as a possible growth engine for the company. And so, protecting the base and thinking about your customers as this growth engine from a revenue standpoint is always important. And Gainsight's been on a mission to make sure that every company is seeing that as mission critical. The macro environment is forcing companies to view this as a mission critical way of growing revenue, but also treating customers well. So how do you protect the customer base right now when budgets are getting slashed or budgets are frozen or competitors are offering consolidation plans and cutting costs? And talk to us about some of the strategies that you employ and that you're teaching your customers to employ.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you set up the backdrop of sort of what's going on really, really well. In many ways, I feel like I'm having deja vu to like when COVID first hit. And I think that was a catalyst for folks really starting to understand customer success and just the appreciation that we always need to have for our install base. And we're kind of on phase 2 of that now. So in terms of like, what do we do, right? I think you're spot on. Like, the customer base to pretty much all organizations couldn't be more important now, like, than any other point in time. So we've introduced what we call the durable growth playbook. And the whole notion of this is, and I'd like to start by saying this isn't just a point in time strategy. Quite frankly, it comprises the 6 core tenets or strategies in terms of what we think organizations should be focused on to ride this growth roller coaster. We've seen it play out the last 3 years. It was bad, then it went up, and then it's down. And if you really embrace these 6 core tenets, you will come out on the right side and really drive to what we call durable growth for long-term success. So the 6 key components, I'll share them, and then we can probably, dig into a few as we go. But number 1, we say like no surprises. That's all grounded in you need to have a really tight risk management program, and ideally predictive type of health scoring that serves as your early warning signal in your business. And Nick and I, our CEO, were like, this is pretty much table stakes for SaaS companies. Like, if you're not doing this, that's a fundamental problem, because that's how your business operates in a recurring way.
I want to double down on this.
Yeah.
Quick. There are 5 more, so sorry for jumping the gun.
That's
but
okay. You're good.
It's so important because so many revenue leaders are hyper focused on this concept of health scoring and predictive scoring for new logo pursuits. And then as soon as something becomes a customer, like, all right, well, our work here is done.
Yes.
The same rigor, the same strategy, the same concept has to be applied to your customer business so that you can keep your eyes on the prize and understand where's their deal risk, where's their account risk, where's their momentum. And your point about no surprises, I think, is a really good wrapper for that. So sorry, I had to interject.
Actually, I think it's a really relevant point. I'm glad you bring it up because number one, you have to have a data-driven way to do this, right? Otherwise, it's kind of like pointing your finger in the air. But it goes back to customer success operating with the same level of operational excellence that our sales organizations have grown up to know and understand. And there's just a standardized way of measuring, tracking, and doing things. And we're starting to see that inflection point in customer success. I always like to say where we make it less squishy. And you've really got to understand the data, use that to guide your high value activities that you're doing, drive that to your leading and lagging outcomes. So I think it's actually a really good point. I'm glad you double clicked into it.
And it's a false choice to say that it's either you have to choose between customer love and supporting your customers and implementing this kind of standardization and measurement and tracking and rigor. Those two things are not opposite sides. They're the different sides of the same coin that leads to customer success. So I'm really happy to call that out.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like folks get caught up in like process and data and they think it's like a bad thing. It's a great thing. This is how you have less wasted effort and you really understand what are the right things that are yielding the largest return for your effort. And being able to use that to then, inform different things that you might want to roll out and strategies for the business.
Love that. Okay, so I interrupted you. You're on pillar one.
I'll go quickly through these, and then you can click into anything that you want. So no surprises. The second one is keep your customer and customer success. So this is one of the big shifts, right? I think early days, we all naturally tend to gravitate towards looking at things from an inside out view, like what are our metrics and what are we doing? But really taking that outside in approach, understanding what the customers are trying to do. So this notion of outcomes, right? And understanding what are their business goals and elevating the level of conversation. So it's not just about feature functionality and adoption. Like that's great. But at the end of the day, are we solving the business needs and the challenges that they're trying to do with your software? So leaning into outcomes across the entire journey from sales to success. And leveraging things like community to bring your customers together, share knowledge, feedback. That's, I think, increasingly becoming more important. So that's the second one. The third one is one of my favorites, which is scaling through digital. So this notion of digital customer success is really blowing up. I actually think it's the next frontier of customer success. We've learned a lot with how to make our customers successful with human-led capital strategies. But things are changing. Number one, given the macroeconomic landscape we're operating within, we can't just continue to throw bodies at things in a linear basis. Right. We've got to drive, towards profitability and growth. Number two, technology is evolving, right? We have more technology at our fingertips to do some really cool personalized things given AI and conversational AI and behavior. And then number three, the way our end users want to consume software, especially by persona, is different. And they very often want it to be more self-serve and tailored to their specific, needs and maturity, et cetera. So leveraging more digital. And then the fourth one is like growing through your products. So leveraging more digital and product-led strategies is going to continue to become important. The last one I'll touch on is just what we call go on offense. So I do want to take a moment because I think there's a lot of doom and gloom out there right now. But a lot of organizations, as we think about the install base and as businesses are planning for their next fiscal years, even the makeup of new logo acquisition and expansion dollars, like the mix might be shifting. Sure. They might realize that, new logo acquisition, that growth rate might slow. So we got to go figure out how we how we elevate the percentage of expansion dollars that we're getting from our base. So go on offense is all about how is your sales and success teams collaborating and coming up with integrated plans to understand the white space, understand what your customers are trying to do. Are there things as CFOs are looking at tech stack consolidation that you can proactively get ahead of and even make your platform more sticky for the long term? So taking a very proactive view in terms of expansion and not just getting so stuck in we got to save our customers, but also make sure that you're optimizing for both sides of the coin.
I love that. So you hit on four of the six pillars of this durable growth
Yeah.
playbook. If people are interested, where can they find the full playbook, Kellie?
Yeah. So if you go to Gainsight's website, I have actually been doing a whole series on this. So we've done five of the six strategies. We've introduced the playbook, and then we kind of do a double click into each strategy. We've gone through five of the six. If you just go to Gainsight's website and look for durable growth playbook, you'll be able to access the whole series.
I am doing that right after this. Thank you very much. So a lot of what you're talking about, Kellie, is sniffing out and solving what we at Clari call revenue leak. And revenue
Yeah.
leak is revenue that you've earned, but you just haven't yet captured. And this is especially true in the customer business where they're already your customer accounts. Now, how do you shore up that renewal, or how do you get that expansion, or how do you do these things? And a lot of what you're talking about, these six pillars that you've outlined in this growth playbook, probably are born, I'm guessing, from some personal experience that you had. So I'm curious if you can tell us a story about where you identified this potential revenue leak, and then you implemented portion of the playbook, or maybe the whole playbook, to
Yeah.
solve that leak. How did you approach that?
We'll start with kind of the no surprises.
Mhm.
That one, and actually COVID was a big accelerator even for us internally at Gainsight. We realized like decisions are going to be happening quickly. How are we all hands on deck, like looking at every little detail, using that to drive programmatic plays and outreaches and programs? So having a risk process where you're inspecting the health of your business every single week is really, really important. So at Gainsight, like instead of just having one big risk meeting, one potential action that you all could think about doing is across your success organization. I imagine you have different segmentation tiers. We sort of amped up the level of rigor around our risk escalation process, and each segment will have a weekly call. We're leveraging health score, and we're going through those updates and creating playbooks to kind of drive them forward. And that made a really big difference in terms of not just retention, but also through those conversations. A lot of times saving a customer actually can turn into expansion because you're solving a business need. So as long as you're anchoring it back around business needs, very often you're uncovering expansion potential as well. I think one of the most relevant things that we've done at Gainsight, so a few years back, kind of going back to, I like to say adoption is necessary, but it's not sufficient. We put a stake in the ground and said, okay, we've got to elevate the level of conversation we're having with our customers. Because the problem statement was, right, yes, they might be using the platform. Gainsight, you can do a lot of different things with it, but are we focused on the right things that are going to solve that business need? So we said adoption's great, but we're going to start to measure even our CS organization on this notion of verified outcomes. So what
Mm.
that meant was enabling them on the core set of usually business goals or challenges. This was like our first like first step into our value kind of journey that we use with our customers. And they needed to identify like, what are we trying to do? Create a success plan with, okay, like, for example, let's say retention's an issue. So we're going to go build out a really great risk management process in Gainsight. How are we going to measure that? Where are you at today? What's the success criteria? And then coming full circle, say, okay, we did indeed, move the needle on that. It's this notion of a verified outcome. And we actually changed, their variable compensation, not to just be adoption based, but like to be more, so what? Like, what impact are we having on the customer? You wouldn't believe how massive that is. So I'll tell you, when we first did it, we did some regression analysis, and customers that had a verified outcome versus customers who didn't had a 20% higher retention rate. So I wanted to share that because I think that's what we're seeing, especially in these economic conditions. just usage is not going to be good enough. You have like more senior level folks looking at your software and technology, and they're going, okay, why are we spending this much? And
Right.
you need to have a bulletproof ROI story to support it. So if you don't have something like that in place, a risk process and starting to really speak in the language of outcomes across your organization and a way to measure it are those would be the two things I would do first.
That's amazing, Kelly. And the way that I think I can frame this as a summary is you need to go from being perceived as a vendor to being perceived as a true partner who
Yes,
understands the strategic initiatives, who's tying your software, your product solution, whatever it is, to being in service of those initiatives that especially the executive team is driving. Otherwise, you're just going to be another piece of tech and
exactly.
people won't understand, especially the executives
Yeah.
won't understand the strategic outcomes that you're able to help drive for them across all levels of the business.
So well said. And if you're not connected with those higher levels, now is the time to get like executive sponsor program in place and start getting to those levels, because decisions are being made often at a level above even some of our day-to-day contacts. So
Yeah.
that would be the third key thing I would deploy. And decisions are happening now. So you need to go out, even if the renewal is not for 6 or 9 months, get in front of that, have the conversations before those, budget decisions are finalized and you don't have a runway to influence it.
This is a super important shift, I think, in customer success. And again, one that you absolutely have to take advantage of right now in this current climate to show that your solution is mission critical. That the shift is, it's not just about customer education. It's about ensuring that you show the company, you show the people that you understand what they're trying to do, and you can
Yes.
match your solution to helping them do that. So the question for you, Kelly, is how do you train your CSMs? How do you train your team to go and uncover these outcomes, these verified outcomes, as you're talking about? How do they know what's top of mind for executives?
Yeah. So we've gone through about 3 iterations of this. And so there is like a crawl, walk, run approach to this, in my opinion. We call it end to end. We call it operationalizing outcomes, is sort of what we call it at Gainsight, and it's end to end. So the first version, like I said, was a few years ago, and we were like, okay, we just got to take the first step, put a stake in the ground. And so we started very basic, and you have a ton of data just from working on customers where you can come together and say, hey, at the end of the day, we know our software is usually solving these 6 challenges, right? So we had the groundswell in the success organization. We built a few slides, right, that they could use in their EBRs or conversations with these are the 6 things. Which ones do you care about? Helping them understand how to get a baseline metric and track it. So just start small, do some education, do some role playing, and the real way to change behavior, in my opinion, is by incentivization. So that's why we also shifted our comp plan to make sure that we were all in. And it worked great. So then the second phase of this was like, okay, it's great that customer success is doing this, but like, we need to make sure we have the same language that starts in sales, goes through onboarding, and then really it should be more of a validation exercise for customer success. So then that's actually where this whole operationalizing outcomes, that's when we named it operationalizing outcomes. And it was a tiger team of people across the organization. It became more robust in terms of use cases, and there's maturity levels within use cases, and it's all built. Sales team like has to put certain things into the opportunity object before they can close it. It feeds a success plan and Gainsight. So this is really where it was operationalized end to end. And then the third version for us, it's a library basically where they start the high level. What are their goal, or like what are they trying to do? There's 3 goals per outcome, and then there's use cases underneath of it. And we've made it almost like a plug and play type of thing so that they can help guide the customer on that journey.
That's amazing, Kelly, and super mature, and a really nice kind of crawl, walk, run playbook for people to implement as well. I want to hit on point 2 that you
Okay.
talked about, which is the same language that your AEs, your pre-sales sellers, are using through onboarding, through CS, because that handoff from pre-sales to post-sales, and I know you don't like that distinction, so
No,
forgive
I'm
me,
good. they're good.
But that handoff is a major area of revenue leak. There's so much
Yeah.
information that's not transferred or collaboration that's not happening or anything like that. So what are your tips to kind of bring this to life and make sure that all of these different revenue critical employees on both sides of the divide are actually working together and collaborating in a way that helps make this a seamless journey for your customers?
Yeah, the baton passes are always the most friction-filled areas of the journey, as I like to call it. And let's be honest, there's going to be some change management that has to happen when you do this. I was a salesperson, so I can speak, out of my own experience. They want to get they want to get that deal done and they want to move on. So whenever you ask them to do more data capture, it's usually not received with open arms. But the way that we actually found it, what helped us is because we sort of did like V1 of this in success. And we created this library of it. Like we actually push them out to Slack. So whenever we get a verified outcomes, it goes to Slack for people to see. We have a dashboard and like sales eyes and ears like lit up. Like this is pure gold for me. I have these stories that I can use to go bring more deals in. It's providing rich benchmarking, all of these things. So that was like the light bulb moment. So having sort of that footprint to build off of really helped this. Now, you have to have a tiger team. So you have to have an owner across the functions that are really held responsible for this. I would even go as far as saying like it should be a company level priority with CEO support down if you want to do this right. And there's different people held accountable across the different functions, and they have committee meetings, etc. And then you share successes, you share there's got to be inspection when it's not working, and you have to have guardrails like literally in the opportunity object, like nope, you have to have their highest priority desired outcome logged, or you can't move that forward. And at the end of the day, once they see the fruits of their labor and what it can yield in terms of dollars and money in their pocket, then it's accelerating expansion deals. Like that's where we've come back and said, hey, we've actually done analysis. When we have X amount of outcomes identified in the sales process, we're actually increasing expansion faster. The deals are bigger. So being able, again, to go back into the data and show them why, that really gets them going.
Amazing, Kellie. Thank you so much. We are amazingly already out of time. It flew by. Again, I
I
want to
know.
give another plug for the durable growth playbook for Gainsight. That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing the wisdom. Thank you for all the thoughts and ideas. Really appreciate it. And that's a wrap.